Welcome, restoration professionals, to Restoration Minutes, your source for industry information and education. Be sure to like and rate us if you enjoy the content we provide.
This episode is brought to you by Helix Co., the most advanced time and material ecosystem for ROMs, time and material billing, job sharing, with digital records and much more. Check us out at www.helixco.io.
All right, welcome into a new episode of Restoration Minutes. Today I've got the one and only Jim Thompson with us. Jim is a contributor to the IICRC standards, is an expert when it comes to safety and a multitude of other things. Jim's actually helped me out on quite a few projects, giving me ammo to kind of go back against consultants. I've learned a good bit from him over the years. He's got some great books out there and even teaches people how he used to do it when he was the large loss king of the world kind of a thing. So, Jim, welcome in.
Hi, thank you much. Yeah, what is a large loss, Mike? What do you think a large loss is? Just jump right into it.
Yeah, so large loss is different for everybody. It really is. Typically what my specialty is commercial large loss. But I remember when I first got started in this industry, anything over $25,000 was large loss. So it's relative, obviously.
Travelers Insurance major case unit goes for $100,000. Some companies go $1 million, some $25,000. Somebody, it depends on. But you're right. It's important. I've been in this business for 45 years. I started out of the Navy as a public adjuster, and I found out that I could deodorize factories and deodorize things and make $600 in a blink of an eye. I kind of like that. My dad was a PA. He'd give me the leads. I'd give him half the money, $300. I'd pay for the gallon of Crown 999. I'd deodorize the factory. Hey, when you're used to getting $378 every 2 weeks in the Navy, and you get $300 by turning on a tri-jet fogger for a half hour, this is a pretty good deal. I got out of the PA. I didn't like chasing the fire trucks and suits and all that stuff, and I just went into restoration. My competitor in St. Louis was called Just Clean, so I called myself Better Cleaning. If he could just clean it, I could clean it better than that. I went to a AIDS convention. I was a certified AIDS inspector by Marty King himself. I was a carpet inspector, and I went to the Association Interior Decor Specialist Convention in Las Vegas about 1981, and on the marquee it said, "Welcome AIDS members." And since I was a certified AIDS inspector, my badge said Certified AIDS Inspector. Association Interior Decor Specialist, Specialist in Fire Restoration. Well, that week, this disease that disproportionately affected the gay community, only in bathhouses in San Francisco at the time, hit the national news. And here we are at Caesars with AIDS and a certified AIDS inspector. The lady at the crap table goes, "They got their own damn convention." So I had a Lloyd Weaver moisture detector with two prongs on the end, where you'd lick it and you'd touch the prongs. It'd be finding water in the wall routine. A little light would blink up. So we're going around with these original moisture detectors looking for AIDS. I had more fun at that convention because instead of being my own self out there with my Sears wetback at Better Cleaning Service in St. Louis, I was part of something. And I ran into my lifetime friend, Cliff Zlotnick, who had Unspoken Restorex, and Lloyd Weaver, who invented the carpet dryer. And Lloyd just impressed the heck out of me, and as did Cliff. I joined their Restorex franchise. They put me under their wing, and I went from around the clock, around the country, around the clock, around the block, to around the clock, around the country. And I said, without Lloyd and Cliff, instead of around the clock, around the country, I'd have been around the clock, around the block. And I took it from there. I had an office in the World Trade Center for my sales office in 2001. I had an office in California, Florida. I worked in 43 states for over 27 years. Had an awfully lot of fun with it. Back then, there wasn't there was competition. It was damn stuff. Sure.
Say again? Yeah, and you had a huge client. I'm not sure if you I said you had a huge client. I'm not sure if you want to say their name on here, but one of the things that you did for them is you would hop into your plane and fly out and deal with it right then and there. And that really, I wrote an article that probably won't hit the magazines until next month because of the holidays, but it's about business interruption, and you seem to have understood that before a lot of people did. That when it comes to commercial clients, it's really about getting them back or keeping them in operation, rather than, let me shut you down for a week while I get this under control, because they can't afford that, And you
here's the thing, but that's
people, I think, in the industry. Go ahead.
It wasn't business interruption, though, Mike. It's not business interruption. They're insured for that. What percentage of companies go out of business after a disaster?
I want to say it's, I looked at these just a couple of weeks ago, 43%.
Good. How many go out of business within 5 years of a disaster?
That number actually goes up because they find out that their clients went elsewhere, so that number ticks up in the 60%, if I recall.
Yeah, it actually goes close to 90% according to SBA, et cetera. Okay. What happens is if you close your restoration company down and didn't answer the phone for 6 months, your best clients, your best friends, they still would have the need. They would go somewhere else. Then you open your phone in 6 months and say, grand opening, I'm back. Good luck. Okay? By now, good. I worked for companies from Anheuser-Busch to 200 jobs for Walmart, Sears, Coast to Coast, May Company, Lord & Taylor. I had national accounts. Walmart 25 years ago would lose $25,000 an hour when the supercenter's down. $25,000 an hour in sales. Now, people who need Pampers, people who want to buy clothes, beer, whatever, they still will buy the Pampers that day. They really will. They need it. So what they'll do is they will go across the street to the other store, won't they? And I have seen stores have fire sales when it wasn't their fire. Just to get the creatures of habit across the street. They have a sale. They say, isn't this much nicer? They're more polite. They're blah, blah, blah. And they never go back. Now, let's turn to the manufacturing line, because I did one house in 20 years. It wasn't my fault. But anyway, manufacturing. There was a $50,000 a minute fine if your part company did not supply parts to a Detroit automobile factory line. $50,000 a minute. So what is my little $16,000 charter airplane fee if you're losing $25,000 an hour or $50,000 a minute? You see where I'm coming from? Now, back to my question with what's a large loss. If I had a loss in Tucumcari, New Mexico for a little tiny Walmart, 52,000 square foot Walmart store. We had two guys go down there. They flew down. It was a poof and doof. It was nothing more than a trash compactor fire and receiving. Okay, so all we did was have move the burnt compactor away, put an odor control barrier over the burnt thing, over the burnt hatch, do a submicron atomization, look at fog the heck out of the receiving, got it signed off, and we were out of there. My bill was less than $16,000, including charter bill. Now, nobody's going to say, $16,000, man, if I had a large loss like that, I'd really be able to buy a new truck. But to that manager in Tucumcari, New Mexico, he had 40 or 50 associates that weren't showing up in the morning. And I bet you he's the only big store in Tucumcari. You see? So to him, that was a huge loss. Does that make sense? I got a call one time. I had a buddy of mine, a very good friend of mine. Factory Mutual brought me to the dance. GAB brought me to the dance. I had a buddy of mine call me at about 10:30 one night, and I had made a marketing mistake. I had made a horrible marketing mistake. I went to BOMA, building owners and managers, and told them, I will handle the janitorial concerns. I'll handle 1,000-person janitorial companies. I'll handle them, anything too big for you. They called me on a bunch of little tiny creek over flood that put 2 rooms in a hall or a utility room in the water. I had 20 of these things. I was not set up. I was set up for semis all over the United States. I was not set up for 20 local laws. That's the type of thing that the franchises at the time would have loved. Give me 20 losses, you know? I'm like, good God. So I'd worked a couple of days straight just to get these damn little things going. We had one big insurance company that was pretty well flooded. It's not a bad loss. But anyway, I had a call from a good friend of mine. Said, Jim, I need you in Temple, Texas tonight. I'm in St. Louis. I said, Mark, I'm just too damn tired. I can't do it. He said, Jim, it's our corporate headquarters. I need you in Temple, Texas tonight. Yes, Mark, I will see you in Temple, Texas. I got a twin charter out of St. Louis. Okay, I can be down there by 2 a.m. You know, I got down there, the vice president of McLean Trucking, good friend of mine. They have 18 distribution centers with over 1 million square feet. I like those guys. They're my friends. I'm a cubic foot guy. Give me cubic feet. I like them. I get down there. Vice president meets me at the airport at the FBO, drives me over there. Since it's a food product, he had $400,000 worth of candy bars that were contaminated or something like that. It was a little dumpster fire was all it was. I go up, I put an odor control barrier on the dumpster. I have to use Thermo 2000, which is a food grade deodorant. I hate that stuff. It doesn't burn worth a dang. I'm sitting there thermofogging it. My vice president of the company is mopping up all the burnt, unused product off the floor. I'm like, great, you know? Anyway, he introduced me to his boss, the president of McLean. He said, you came from St. Louis? I said, yes, sir, I came from St. Louis tonight to do this. Yep. Mark called me. Flew back to St. Louis. I had a message from Mark. They passed the health inspection at 0800 in the morning. They were happy as hell. Great. I got to the meeting at 10:30. I was supposed to be there at 10 with the management company on the insurance company loss there at their building. And he said, aha, you finally got some sleep, old man. I see. You got some sleep at last. I said, no, I flew down to Temple, Texas, knocked out a 1 million square foot distribution center for McLean. Saved them their ass, and they got flew back. And the guys, yeah, right. And I pulled out a little handwritten receipt from Rosito's breakfast burritos. They're great. They don't have no A on the window. You knock on the window, you hand them $3, $5. They give you 3 breakfast burritos. Signed a little receipt for me. And I showed it to him that same morning. You know, hey, no, I was in Texas this morning. The challenge with hanging out a shingle that says around the clock, around the country, anywhere tonight with equipment, somebody's going to call your ass on that stuff. And you might be in Puerto Rico and you got a damn fish factory up here in Kodiak, Alaska on the spit and going, you want me there tonight? Okay. How fast a plane are you going to rent? Anyway, back to you, Mike. I love large losses because you don't have the emotion involved. You don't have the, oh, you stole Aunt Ruby's ruby red ring. Oh, my God, we saw it in that dresser 3 years ago. That's the finest couch I've ever seen. Oh, my God, it's threadbare. And the fireman didn't cause that threadbare. You did in your jujubes, lady. Sorry.
No, I definitely get it. And, you know, that's kind of why I migrated to that side. You know, I got tired of the residential, that, and I just wanted to grow, you know, my knowledge, you know, as I was coming up. And then, you know, back when I first got started doing commercial losses, it was all about, you know, let's shut this thing down, let's get that out. You know, then it took me a while to learn that, you know, and it took a large government project I did for me to learn that these guys don't want to shut down. There ain't going to be no shutdown. You know, you got to figure out how to work around it and get them back up and running, or, you know, at least get, you know, what's most important up and running first and foremost, because they just don't want to shut down. And, you know, it was a learning curve, but, you know, it was a very important learning curve. You know, one of the things that you've helped me out with to kind of shift a little gears is, you know, I was fighting some consultants a few years back when I reached out to you, and, you know, and I remember even shame on myself for not looking at other standards, but I had a consultant that was trying to argue category of water with me, and you told me to use the gypsum standard, you know, and you sent me a copy of it, and saved my butt, and you know, and then I was also like, went back and I read the entire freaking standard and quite a few more since then, and I was like ashamed of myself that here I am, I'm in this industry and I've never read that freaking standard ever, you know. You know, I think that that's what I like about you is you have this vast knowledge of different things. You've been doing it for 45 years. You want to take a second and kind of explain to everyone what that gypsum standard says and how you helped me out?
Well, I'm on the ICRC Standards Committee. I was on the S550 commercial water damage with my friend Mickey, who's now passed, and Howie Wolf, and et cetera. Some very dynamic people. They were competitors for a long time. They worked for Montrose, et cetera. But anyway, they're dang good guys and ladies. Anyway, the S550 got disbanded a few months ago because we argued with the S500 on categories of water damage. So the board said, off your head. We don't need you commercial. We'll handle it all. We know it all. Well, commercial water is totally different than residential water. You got chases and 20-story elevator hoistways and all sorts of fun stuff. But this crap about, oh my God, the wall has been wet for 6 hours, therefore it must be that, and the toilet's backed up, it must be this, and it must be that because the book said it was. And my pet peeve is any drop of water from a named storm can be category 3, therefore it's a named storm, and 4 months later it rained inside, therefore it must be category 3 grossly contaminated. And I'd say, okay, I'm working for the insurance company. What's it contaminated with? Show me your IH report. Show me your chem lab report. What's it contaminated with? But it's Cat 3. The book said it's Cat 3. I don't give a damn what a book says. Page 2 on the book says we're not responsible for jack squat because we're not there. Okay. What the Jepson Association basically is like the IICRC, in my understanding, or the RIA for drywall. That's their standards. Okay? They have their standards, we have our standards. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, 2019 Jepson standard, was that the number of it, 2008 or something like that? And what it dealt with was if the wall has been wet for a length of time, it no longer has the structural integrity it was when it was put in. It doesn't have the fire resistance capability it has when it's in. So therefore, it needs to be taken out, not from a microbial standpoint, from a structural integrity standpoint. So when somebody comes back to me and says, oh, well, it was Cat 2 for more than 48 hours, therefore it's immediately Cat 3, therefore this, then I turn around and say, okay, per 1910, 120, what is it, E2I, I believe, all OSHA says there's a law that says employees exposed to or potentially exposed to hazardous substances, including chemicals and biological agents, ... shall receive a minimum of 40 hours off-site training and 3 days on-site training with a qualified superintendent. Would you please show me your HAZWOPER standards? How many people here have HAZWOPER? You said it's grossly contaminated. That's a health hazard. It says right here, biological agents is a health hazard. Where's your HAZWOPER?
Yep.
I have my WRT. Oh, good. I'm glad you do. I don't give a dang. And I'll tell you what, you go out here and say, I have my WRT, ABC, ERT, and a triple master carpet dyer, and that factory doesn't give a flying frick. How fast can you get me back in operation, kid? You can't shut down production line 3. You can have 2, but not 3. And then at midnight, we'll give you 3 for 2 hours, do cryogenic blasting, then we'll give you back to 1. We got an order we got to get out of here.
Yep.
Oh, but I prefer to close everything down for 3 weeks. I'll bring in 400 rent-a-drunks, and we'll just run the bill out the roof. It will be so grand.
That's what happens. I got a friend of mine that actually just did a factory in North Carolina, I guess about 6 months ago. And they supply sporting goods all around the world, mostly for soccer, and they could not shut down. They were like, we are not shutting down, we are not shutting down. And they had a disgruntled employee come into the warehouse and start a fire, set off sprinkler heads, all the great good stuff. And so this guy devised basically built an inside containment so they could work around the production line and keep things rocking. It was pretty amazing. He set up the roller slides, and so they could set up their own assembly lines to clean all the contents that were affected and put them right back into the shipping place where they're able to be shipped out. I mean, it was a beautiful sight to see. I've seen a lot of videos and pictures of it as he was going through it. They did the same thing. They brought in the guys from Procure and deodorized the whole building within 8 hours, you know, and it was humongous. It was a humongous building. Don't want to give too much away because I'm not maybe at liberty to say who the client was or anything like that. So I love watching and learning from others, you know, and that's what I like about this. And anyone who thinks that they know it all in this industry has still got something to learn, you know. And you know, one of the biggest shocks that I have found in the classes that I teach and the companies I've consulted with over the years is their basic lack of OSHA knowledge, you know, and these guys are running jobs that are $500,000 to $200 million worth of projects, and they probably don't even have their OSHA 10, you know, and then they're trying to make these arguments to consultants that are out there that know better than they are, and you talk about getting in trouble, you know, and getting your hands slapped. You go out and you perform a project like that without the proper knowledge of how to keep your job site safety done, your worker safety done, and provide the care for your guys, so on and so forth. And then even HAZWOPER, you know, I've got my HAZWOPER 40 as well. And, you know, it's one of those things that I made a decision years ago. I'd start off with my OSHA 10, and then I was like, okay, that's not enough. I did my OSHA 30. And that's one of the things I recommend to everybody that's trying to get into commercial laws is that at a bare minimum, if you're doing even small commercial stuff, you need to have an OSHA 10 at a minimum. If your project manager don't have an OSHA 10, you're in trouble. And you're definitely the OSHA king, Jim, so I'll let you talk a little bit about that.
Okay, first of all, going back, wrap up, it's Gypsum Association document GA 231. That was a document dealing with water damage on it. Back on the McLean loss, my bill on that was under $18,000, including charter airplane bill. Okay? My next, nobody would say that's a large loss. My next loss, I cleared $1.1 million net profit on with the same guy. Okay? Now, that was Hurricane Charley 21 years ago in Orlando. I shared bad jokes with that risk manager last week. Okay? Now, a risk manager works in the finance department because it's finance. It deals with money. It deals with insurance. It deals with safety and work comp. Factories, stores, businesses have more slip, trip, and falls than they do hurricane losses. Trust me. Okay? Now, the safety manager reports to, in most corporations, if not all, the risk manager, who reports to the chief finance officer or is the chief finance officer. So if I'm marketing, 78% of my work nationwide was done for risk managers. Why? Because they have 3,000 stores or 500 stores or whatever. I'd rather market one guy that has 500 pieces of property than spend an hour a day seeing 4 people and seeing 2,000 people cold in a week or in a year, and then see one guy for lunch who has twice as much square footage as that guy does in one lunch. You see? Now, by the safety manager, yeah. So I worked in 43 states, in Alaska, Puerto Rico, etc. Why didn't I work in some of the northern Dakotas and Wyoming? They didn't have enough factories for me. You know, they have a sign that says, warning, last Dollar General store for 20 miles, you know, on the side of the road. Safety, gee, that goes back to OSHA. And by the way, when my friends at OSHA show up, they're pronounced OSHA. They don't like their other pronunciation over the radio. OSHA came about to save lives. A lot less people are getting killed on job sites because they're the hammer and the stick together with keeping guys safe. Now, digressing, many years ago, I had a loss at a church, and the church had the AV of the day audiovisual of a cut in the wall. And that's where they put the slide projector, was through the cut in the wall. And what they did was they built a box right in the entryway, 10, 12 feet high, whatever, and they put a piece of plywood on it, and then they had a hole in the wall that the little guy here could shine his projector through the wall, and it would show up behind the pastor on the front of the church, right? Well, they had 27-foot high pine ceiling, and I told my crew chief, Gene, to get that ceiling cleaned with chem sponges. So, sure enough, I come back, I see that 12-foot high deck up there, a little piece of plywood on top. I see a 2x10. What's at the end of a 2x10? A ladder. Two men are standing on the 2x10 as a counterbalance, and on the ladder is a 5-foot step ladder. What's on the top of the step ladder? Gene on 1 foot. Trying to get that chem sponge, right? I'm doing business, still had better cleaning. So I go up, I stand on the damn board with him. Because I knew as soon as I go, hey! He goes, what? He would Peter Pan on down. And then he wouldn't just hit the concrete, he'd probably go down the concrete stairs to the activity room down below, the basement, right? I'm like, oh gosh. So I knew OSHA was going to show up, the pastor, the adjuster was going to show up from Factory Mutual. The second I stand on that board with a diving board out there, right? Oh, he had to do it. He had the front step and the back brace on the floor. He was up there. Now, I said, Gene, come on down. Nothing happened. Now, if OSHA had been involved, I would have been fined. Why would I have been fined? I wasn't even there. It was that idiot crew chief. Why would I have been fined, Mike?
Well, I do not know. I know that when that was your employee, I would think that you wouldn't be fined. So explain that to us.
Yeah. General duty clause. The employer shall provide to his employees employment and place of employment which are free from recognized hazard likely to cause serious injury or death. Gene was using every bit of redneck IQ points he had to figure out how to get my job done. He was doing it. Now, if I had been smarter as a boss, I would have come up with a Baker scaffold or a scissor lift or now a spider lift that puts very little tension on the floor. Something to get my men up there or scaffold it. You see? It wasn't Gene's hat. It wasn't his job to get up there, figure it out. My job was how to safely figure it out up there. You see where I'm coming from? Now, I would tell employees for many years, I would rather have you fired than lose an eye today. I don't want you hurt. I really don't want you hurt. One thing, I'm Ebenezer Scrooge. I'm a miser. If you get hurt on a damn job site, I got to send you sail to the emergency room. Sit there with 8 hours while people who are seriously hurt get bandaged up. I got to send a crew chief with you. Now I've got not one guy off loss, I've got 2 guys off loss. Now I'm behind my schedule because I'm not getting planned for that crew that day. Yeah, that crew chief is going to be getting on my clock while he's sitting there doodling in the emergency room. Needless to say, a guy getting sewn up is going to be on my clock too. So why don't we just go ahead and if you need a Type 1A ladder, buy a Type 1A ladder and let's do it right. If we need a JLG scaffold, let's get an articulating boom, let's get an articulating boom. You know, my buddies at Sunbelt will be there, or Garrett McKenzie, or GDR, whatever. They will be there with it. Actually, they will be there with this stuff, you see? So let's get the situation handled beforehand. Now, what most people don't realize, it's a commercial. Oh, 29 CFR 1932, look at this. The employer shall do a job site inspection prior to any employees entering the job site. Before any work gets done, shall. Now, shall means they can hit you with a fine. Serious fines right now are $16,500 something a person, times 6 people on the crew. That's just a serious. If you knew better, it's 10 times that amount. You tell them I don't have the money. Well, OSHA says fine. IRS finds money. They're our collector, right? Now, you shall determine what hazards are present, what PPE is needed, how to train your people in the PPE, how to fit the people with the PPE, and then shall have a certificate that it is certified as a hazard assessment on this job site. It doesn't say couch cleaning, it doesn't say factory building. This is employers shall. So if I walk into a factory, give you a story, one of the big franchises up in St. Louis. I was talking to my former vice president of operations, project manager last night, just shooting the breeze. And he said he had one where he looked over and saw a bunch of franchise trucks show up. A bunch of guys run into the factory. 10 minutes later, they get thrown out. There's a flood. They get thrown out. They show up an hour and a half later with hats on, hard hats, and goggles, and boots on, and they're ready to work. What do you think the factory workers thought of that franchise restoration professionals when they show up as Johnny New Boots with a new hat?
And that
you see my point?
Don't know what they're doing.
And they shouldn't be in my frickin' factory. Now, let's go the other way. Let's say that I walk up and use safety as a sales, not as a penalty, and say, may I please have a copy of your safety analysis, your job site safety analysis, your safety. I don't care what you call it, HSA, HJA, whatever, I don't care. Give it to me, right? May I have a copy of your SDSs? By the way, here's ours. May I have a copy of your company health and safety plan? By the way, here's ours. Now, do you have a safety professional here or somebody that can walk through with my safety professional and do my hazard assessment while guys are loading out a truck? What impression am I giving to them?
Amen.
You see where I'm coming from?
Doing.
We are not.
I was going to say, that's
risk
one of
is
the things that we teach in our
probability.
Classes is that the very first thing we do is hazard assessment. Yep.
Okay. Now, risk by definition is the probability and severity of a hazard to cause harm. Hazard is something that is able to cause harm. So, a risk manager is in charge of probability and severity of hazards to cause harm and reduction of those hazards to cause harm and the harm reduction of the harm that they would cause. You see? So if I walk in, here are my guys' crew chiefs. Here are their OSHA 10s. Here's the superintendent's OSHA 30. Here's their IICRC, WRT, AMRT, CR3, blah, 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 blah. You see? And hand it to my client. Since I'm sent in by the risk manager, that risk manager is always going to say, about an hour after I'm supposed to get there, did my guys get there? Always the same thing, right? Well, my guys,
Yep.
yeah, how do they, the next thing she'll say is, how do they look? Well, we kicked them out because they didn't have their hard hat, ears, eyes, hands, feet, right? Or, man, God, their guys are training my guys' things. In other words, they are bringing in reduction of risk, not adding to the risk. Make sense where I'm coming from? Now, go back to 10. Yes, it's not required, but I think every employee on a job site should have an OSHA 10 because that teaches them their rights. You know, it teaches them their rights to be able to complain, their rights to be able to have a safe and healthy workplace. Now, the 30, as you well know, that's for the superintendents, and that is, how do we design our company health and safety plan? How do we come up with this particular program? It deals more with, I did it with Duke Energy recently, and what I did was hand out the 1926 construction books, and then I would show them my funny OSHA violation slides, PowerPoint, of guys up on a bobcat with a ladder on top of the bobcat, stand on top of that, and say, okay, teams, break them up into 4 or 5 teams, you have 10 minutes to find all the OSHA regulations violated in this picture and give a report. Yep. Now, boom, boom, boom. In other words, it makes them think about it. Does it make sense where I'm coming from? So I use safety, and always has, as a sales technique. Besides that, I don't want to have 2 of my guys, I don't want anybody coming to my job site and breaking a leg. I really don't want them to have to tell their family, well, Gene was just stupid, that's why he's dead. I tell my guys, if I have to send your ass home, your dead body home on a Greyhound bus, I cannot put 10 and 10 on top of my expense on the expense. I cannot take that yellow sheet and turn it in. Sending Joe's body home plus 10 and 10. And Sarah would not pay the COD to get you off that bus. I guarantee she wouldn't go down and clean her body. So therefore, you get your ass killed, it's going to cost me money. Now, my safety and command centers, RVs, my mobile Marine Task Force, safety and command centers, yachts, this shit costs me money. I don't want to give it to you or your widow, okay? But by communicating, I care more about you than I do about the job site. I don't want you hurt. I don't want anybody. One time in '80, he was doing a tornado in Bedford Village outside St. Louis, Missouri. And I had a temp, and he said, wouldn't today be a good day to get hurt and light up on work comp for 3 or 4 months? He didn't know that I was the owner. That blue van I had came to a screeching halt. Last I saw was his right foot and his ass out that door, and I swear to God to this day, I think I was pretty well stopped at velocity and momentum when I saw it go out there. I'm like, I had a rented drunk one time come up and say, I don't know why I'm working today. I got my rent paid the whole week at the men's home. I said, damn, I've made my mortgage payment too. What the hell am I doing here?
All right, Jim.
Give your men
tell everybody a little bit about your.
Go ahead.
Tell everybody a little bit about your HAZWOPER class and when your next class is at.
Okay, my next class is sold out, and that is January 12th to 16th. 40 hours of hazardous waste operations and emergency response. I was one of the authors of the S900, the consensus body for illicit drugs remediation and associated toxic waste precursors, etc. I have resigned from the IICRC Drug Course Task Force. I really think it's above their pay grade, to be honest with you. And fentanyl is extremely deadly. Carfentanil, if you can see it, it can basically kill you. And we've lost more people in the United States in the last 5 years than we lost soldiers in 5 years of World War II from this country. It's not on the news, but we lose twice as many some years as we lost in Vietnam, and our low point was as much as we lost in Vietnam. Okay, that's not like I could. Now, during Vietnam, there'd be all sorts of news saying, oh, we lost 15 guys in the Delta, we lost 3 guys up by Da Nang, whatever. You don't see that on the news. Hey, Chicago, we lost 38 today. New York, we lost 15. You don't see that stuff on the news. So, I want to have a restoration guy go in there and handle a hazardous material so deadly that a little tiny bit can kill everyone in the room. Oh no, it's above our pay grade type thing. Now, based on that, I am teamed up with the organization, which is the gold standard in training the United States military, as well as the DEA, FBI, CIA, etc., on how to handle this stuff. I've had, according to the administrator at University of South Florida OSHA Training Institute, more classes there than anyone in USF's history. My last class was 2 weeks ago, so I still do a lot of OSHA training. I've got all 3 OSHA professional certificates, general industry, construction, and maritime. I'm an instructor in HAZWOPER, I'm an instructor in disaster site worker, etc. Now, on the HAZWOPER, I have a lot of fun with that. I've been in hazardous materials over 40 years. I've been certified in hazardous materials since November 20th, 1984. It was a long time ago, you know? So I've still been doing it. I still play with hazmat. I love hazmat. I have a lot of fun. All it is basically test, and then go in with the right PPE. The cleanup's the easy stuff. See, my problem with teaching restoration guys 40-hour HAZWOPER or anything else with hazmat is we're used to being John Wayne and running in with our vacuums and handling. In hazmat, we go in and we test. We have our lab results back. We know everything about what we're walking into, and then we walk into with the right teams and the right PPE. You see? So the cleanup is the 9th inning. It's not the 1st inning. Now, that being the case, I do custom restoration, custom HAZWOPERs at companies, and I can take up to 20 people, minimum of 6, but up to 20 people, and do the 40-hour full hazardous waste operations emergency response. And 2 days are 20 subjects covered under 1910-120. We have 20 quizzes. We go through it. 1 day is playing with the equipment, and 2 days is on you. It is all scenarios that the students show me. I've trained for 3 days, your turn. I just did one for an EPA grant down in Miami in October. It's a fun course. My problem is you can't get the damn grin off their face because our guys are never in these great big zoot suits and all this stuff. And by the time they're doing this, we're having pizza, pizza, pizza. We used to yell, call 911, but somebody actually did. So now we just yell, man down, pizza, pizza, pizza. We have to drag them out on our stretchers and all this fun stuff. And then we still have to decon them before we Narcan them. You know, and we got to do this. And I got people freaking out. Oh my God, oh my God. I said, you know, you're in the hot zone. You can't run in the, oh, she's dying. No, you're dead if this was for real. You failed. Okay, class, we're going to do this one again, you know? But when they walk out of there, they've got a certificate that can get them killed, Mike, because that hand swapper can get you into chemical, biological agents, radiological, nuclear, energized explosives. That can get you. OSHA has a program. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's the Disaster Site Worker Program. They want a cadre, according to OSHA, a team of people who are well trained to respond to natural and man-made disasters. My office in New York was a man-made disaster in 2001, you know? And they come up with 3 courses for that.
Yes.
Yeah, well, one administration didn't like the word terrorism, so they took terrorism out. So now it's man-made disaster. They've got 3 courses. One of them's a 10-hour OSHA, as you said, which I think every client should have. I can come give that to up to 40 people in a day and a half. Piece of cake, you know? I come to your place, I can teach 30 people, 40 people, whatever. No big deal. The next one is the 40-hour hand swapper, which OSHA puts in the Disaster Site Worker Program. I can teach up to 20 people on that at your shop, okay? The next one is the Disaster Site Worker, and I'm doing this all the time. Disaster Site Worker is a 2-day, 15-hour class. I'm having one at my office next month. I think the 20th and 21st in January here in Ocala, Florida. I can come in, I can train up to 10 people per OSHA, no prerequisites on the Disaster Site Worker. Now, if I have a qualified assistant, such as yourself, Mike, I can train up to 20 people per OSHA. You see? Now, who qualifies them? I do. I make sure that they're qualified to do it. But that's 20 people in 2 days. It's a permanent card from OSHA that says Disaster Site Worker. Now, the challenge with that is, that one can get you in trouble too. Because with that, you go up to Barney Fife up there with his bullet at the National Guard checkpoint, and you pull out an OSHA card, Disaster Site Worker, that means you're supposed to be here for work. You see?
Yep.
Now, why do you think OSHA came up with this disaster? Why do you think they came up with a special card just for disasters?
So they can probably get through security a lot quicker and get to where they need to go. You know, I would think that, and also definitely make sure it doesn't get confused with the standard OSHA card.
It deals with the. You're right from our standpoint, but from their point is, disasters have hazards totally different than normal construction. Disaster has hazards totally different than even hand swapper. You see, hazardous materials. Because you can plan a lot of things. The hand swapper, I definitely plan before we go into the containment area. You know, the hot zone, the contamination reduction corridor setup. In a disaster, the standard Hezbollah terrorism attack, and I love terrorism. I've got a lot of college classes in terrorism. I keep getting straight A's. My wife said, why are they teaching this? I said, because the bad guys know it and the professors love me because I come up with attacks that they can't stop. I have too much fun with this stuff. Anyway, the bottom line is you do an initial attack like Tower 1 at the World Trade Center. That comes down, then the first responders run in, and Tower 2 comes down and kills 378 of them. You see? So a standard terrorism attack is you do the initial attack to kill civilians. You do the secondary attack, bomb right down the street or right next to it or whatever, to kill the first responders. You see?
Yep.
We are, per Homeland Security, we are second responders. We're not first responders, we're second responders. We're skilled support personnel that still comes into disaster sites. Therefore, in case of a terrorist attack, there could be an exploding truck right next to the ones that we're coming in to clean up the shopping mall that just got blown up. You see?
Yep.
So OSHA wants us to be aware that when we're going through disasters, you well know, those structures are not stable. They can have lean-tos, they can have pancakes, different types of destruction. These things can kill our people. So OSHA has a 2-day class, disaster site worker, on how to be safe as a disaster worker, in addition to their construction, in addition to their hand swapper. And those three together is what OSHA has called the disaster site worker program, which from my standpoint as a former employer, that's the kind of thing I'd brag all over the place. My guys have the OSHA disaster site worker program, 10-hour hand swapper, disaster site worker. And per OSHA, it has to be done pre-incident, of course, because we don't have time to do this shit before, after the stuff hits the fan. We're too busy.
Yeah, and you don't want that guy coming on your job site either as soon as he walks out of class. You like for him to kind of graduate up to that, that's for sure. Hey, Jim.
Well, you've seen stories. I've seen stories.
I'm sorry?
I was going to say,
Say it again?
Everyone I talk to in our industry has their own story. You see? That's one thing I love about why I'm still doing this is you guys are solving problems I had for 25 years and go, damn, I wish I'd tried that. So I'm still learning.
Yeah, I mean, that's where training definitely comes in as a big thing. All right, Jim, tell everybody how they can reach you, and we'll do this again here probably maybe at the first of the year, because I know there's a lot more stuff I'd love to get into with you. But let people know how they can get in touch with you.
Okay, my telephone number, is there anybody remembers, is 727-424-2000. My website is pretty easy. It's Jim Thompson CO for company, just jimthompsonco.com. And my email address is jimthompsonco@gmail.com. So it's Jim Thompson Company. Okay? If you just put in Jim Thompson, you're going to see the Thailand guy with CIA 50 years ago. But I'm just saying, it's like Jim Thompson Company, jimthompsonco.com, or jimthompsonco@gmail.com. And I go anywhere plus expenses. I've taught classes in Australia, I've taught classes in Canada, etc. The older I get, the more I want to stay around Florida for some reason, But when COVID hit, when COVID hit, I taught 9 back-to-back HAZWOPers, drove 25,000 miles, and my wife pulled me off the road and said, "You can't drive 16 hours, teach 40 hours, drive 16 hours, teach 40 hours. Where are you at? LA? How the hell did you get out there?" Anyway, I go anywhere, but I'd prefer to do it in my office in Florida. It's cheaper that way too.
All right, so any of you guys, if you've not had a HAZWOPer class, or if you just really need to pick Jim's brain, because it's definitely full of great information, I highly recommend you guys engage with Jim. He's always willing to help and talk and provide advice. Great guy in our industry. Been doing it longer than just about anybody I know. So, thank you, Jim. I appreciate it.
And I do a lot of private marketing. I do a lot of private marketing consultants and 2-day marketing thing. We talked here about safety and jobs. You can't do it unless you've got it, and that's what I really teach guys at, is how to get it. And Mike Ikett's son took one of my classes from his dad, Rick and Randy, and Uncle just sold Serve Pro, and said, "If you were selling business, you'd cost us $100 to $200 million a year. Can I hire you?" I said, "I don't need an alarm clock, Mike."
All right, Jim, I appreciate you coming on today. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy. Thank you, sir. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year, okay? Thanks, buddy.